please stop killing spiders. I get it. I'm scared of spiders too. When I was little, maybe 7 or 8, I was getting ready for bed and I looked down and saw a large spider crawling up my nightshirt. The inside of my nightshirt. I screamed, I panicked, I cried, and I've pretty much had that reaction ever since any encounter with a spider. Finally, after a near miss with an orb weaver spider in my garage while taking out the recycling, I decided I had to do something about this. I was a grown man with a house and I couldn't be calling my father in tears to come over at 10 p.m. because a spider had built a web between my trash cans and my car, and I wasn't sure how I was going to get to work the next day if it wasn't removed. I allowed the large spider to move in at the base of the step leading into my garage. She had built a thick, messy web like a gauze sheet, and she hid herself under it. I had to step over her every time I wanted to get in my car. In time, another of her kind joined in, and then another, until I had a line of 3 sentries at the door to my house. Like the Furies, except these were skittish ambush predators, waiting for prey to come to them, and hiding whenever I walked past. Initially, I sort of hopped through the doorway, trying to put as much distance between us whenever I stepped over. Gradually, I grew used to their presence, and eventually stopped paying attention to them at all. I'm much better about spiders now. I've held the smaller ones. I've even had a larger jumping spider crawl across my fingers that I pressed against the ground in its path. I don't have to call my dad to kill spiders in the house for me. After what I saw, however, I won't kill them at all anymore. While I was trying to overcome my fear of spiders, a friend tried to help me by sending me stories. How spiders were the first weavers, and, most memorably, a Cherokee story about Grandmother Spider, who wrapped the sun up in her web and brought it to the earth so we might have light. Spiders weren't something to be feared, she'd said. They were our helpers. I didn't need to be afraid of Grandmother Spider. I wish reality was that kind. The truth is far more terrifying. I went for a hike in the park that sits at the edge of the city. It's a large stretch of forest and fields interlocking with trails that wind along rivers and up and down the hills. It's fairly populated during the spring and summer, so I was certainly not alone. Not until I left the riverside trail behind. I met a handful of other people as I walked, determined hikers, like me, that just nodded and kept going, wanting to get their 7 or 10 mile loop done. I was alone on the stretch of trail when I found the spiders. They crossed the path in a line, walking one behind the other in single file, a vast array of shapes and sizes. I haven't gone so far to memorize what each kind is, and I only recognize the orb weavers due to their distinctive coloring, which has been burned into my memories after I almost ran into one face first in my garage. I stood there and watched this unusual sight for a few minutes, bewildered by their behavior. I'm not an expert on spiders by any means, but I think anyone would realize that seeing this wide a variety all walking in a row like this is bizarre, and so many. I had realized that I had seen at least 20 pass by me in the first half minute as I continued to watch. They continued to walk past in an unbroken string. 50, perhaps, then 100, and still they came. I looked to the right, tracing their line with my eyes, and I saw a rippling road traversing the forest floor for as far as I could see. I looked to my left, and it was the same. A line of spiders all traveling to the same destination. I decided to follow them. Yes, I've read Harry Potter, like everyone else, and I remember the part with the spiders and Aragog. But that is fiction, and I thought what I was seeing was just some natural oddity that could be explained if I just found their destination and maybe asked someone who studies spiders the right questions. God, I wish it were Aragog that I'd found. They led me downhill, to a shallow spot between the rolling hills, and I think at some point, as I wound through some sparse brush and over fallen logs, they led me someplace entirely else, for I felt like the quality of the air changed, grew denser, like it was pressing on my chest. I began to grow nervous at that point, wondering if perhaps this behavior was due to some chemical in the air, and here I was, breathing it in. I set that aside as a crazy, wild invention of a mind being allowed to run too loose with its imagination. Then the light changed, subtly, and I thought that perhaps I should turn back, and that the dimming of the light between the tree leaves was from clouds, gathering over the sun, and that the weather was preparing to change abruptly. I kept going, however, rationalizing that I've come this far, and would be ashamed to give up when surely, an answer to this mystery was just ahead. I continued to follow the spiders, and then the earth dropped to a steep, sudden slope, and I stopped short, loose dirt crumbling under my feet to roll down the incline to the pit that gaped before me. I wasn't in the park anymore. I was elsewhere, though I have no idea where that elsewhere was. Before me was a massive, open space, a circular pit large enough to swallow a house. The trees all around it grew inwards, curving upwards, towards a hidden sun, sending out their branches as if they could hide away what lay beneath from the muted light. There was no wind. The air was stagnant and smelled of damp earth, a stale scent tainted with decay. It filled my nose and mouth, and I breathed shallowly. No wind, no sound, save for the rustle of minuscule legs from the millions and millions of spiders that filled the pit. There were 4 lines making their way to the depression. The one I stood beside, and then 3 more aligned like a compass along the circle. They crawled down the bare earthen sides and then skittered in among the teeming, undulating mass of spiders that rose and fell and broke upon the edges like the ocean. I stared at this for some time. Panic was lodged like a stone in the back of my throat, a remnant from when I was a little boy seeing the dark shape moving up the inside of my white nightshirt. I fought it, I shoved it down into my stomach, and I remained rooted to the spot, nauseous with lingering terror and revulsion at the unnatural sight before me. Then I began to feel like something was watching me, like a touch on the back of my neck, running along my spine, and I slapped at my skin in sudden panic, thinking perhaps a spider had crawled up on me. But no, there was nothing there. The spiders remained in their line, oblivious to my presence and intent on joining their brethren in the pit. Still, the sensation remained. A crawling, aching sort of anxiety that clawed at my nerves and made me think that perhaps I should just turn around and go. I edged away from the pit. And then the spiders surged, a bulge forming just a handful of yards from where I stood watching, and I staggered backwards and screamed as though my will broke. Like skin breaking, the massive spiders split open, and I saw film underneath, downy white, layers and layers of spider silk. And then that too began to tear apart. From beneath it emerged a mouth. No, part of a mouth. The fleshy red pink gums, a line of teeth like those of a shark, each the size of my head. Another row of teeth, and another, spiraling down into the darkness, the edge of the spider's broken webbing. The mouth spasmed and the spiders rained down inside it, struggling to free themselves with saliva before falling in between the rows of teeth. The survivors rushed to fill the gap, crawling over each other, drawing the line of that living ocean closer. And I saw the trail of spider silk they left behind. I watched their struggle without moving a muscle, as if paralyzed in terror. I felt like I was fixed in place, pinned there by an inescapable will of which I wholly occupied its attention. My arms prickled with goosebumps and my throat was dry. The mouth continued to thrash, and now the entire pit bucked and rippled with a thing's struggles. Spiders poured into the pit, spinning their web, weaving the cage that kept their captive from rising out of the earth. And then I realized that it was me that was doing this. That thing was reacting to my presence, and it was trying to break free. It was an effort to turn, like I was moving through water. I began to run, even as my limbs tried to drag me down. It was as if the air itself refused to enter my lungs. My chest burned, but I kept going, almost on my hands and knees, clawing my way forwards, back up the hill and away from that horrific pit. The thing screamed. It was like the sound of metal being torn apart, like the thousands of voices shrieking in a metallic, ear-splitting tone. And then it changed. A choking, gurgling sound like something drowning. The spiders, I realized, pouring over it and sacrificing their bodies to cover it up once more with their web. The dead creating a bridge for the living, to keep going, to keep weaving until it was covered up once more. I ran until the air thinned and the sunlight returned. I ran until I reached the trail, and then I ran until I came to a fork in the road, and there was a bench. There were people. And only then could I stop and collapse and catch my breath. A young couple stopped and asked if I was okay. I said I was, just that I was terribly afraid of spiders, and I had had one fall on me, and well, maybe it was undignified, but I freaked out and ran. They laughed and said it was understandable. The man offered me some water, but I thought of that mouth, the spiders falling to their death in its saliva, and I refused. When I got home, I stared at the three sisters living at the base of my step for a long time. I shivered, an involuntary shudder, but it was not at them. It was at what I saw, what I remembered, and the thought that someday these three furies would heed some silent call, depart my garage and journey out to that place to join the rest of their kind in the pit. Please, I beg of you, do not kill spiders. I understand if you're afraid of them. I was too. But I felt the weight of that creature's malevolent attention, and I feel like I've seen the doom of our world. And the spiders are the ones holding it back.